My wife was killed in a tragic accident, then I found out she was cheating. 2 months ago, my wife of 10 years, I'm 35, she was 34, tragically passed away in a car accident, hit by a drunk driver in broad daylight. I cried non-stop for 3 days. We were planning on having kids and I had started a good paying job a year earlier, and we just purchased our first home just 2 months before her death. I just couldn't and still can't believe she is really gone from my life. It's like just yesterday everything was heading in the right direction and would soon raise a family. She seemed happy in our marriage and stated how proud of me she was. The following week after the accident, I received her phone, which was locked. After a week, I found out how to unlock it by an obvious code I didn't think of earlier. I simply just wanted it to keep photos in her memory, photos of us and so forth. But I saw some odd things in her photos. Included photos of her in someone else's house, a house which I had never seen before, taking provocative images. I continued scrolling down and seen the most heart-wrenching thing I ever seen. Which was her with another man. It was nothing sexual, but they were in a place that was obviously his. And just how close they were, I just knew that this was an affair. The guy who wife had an affair with, showed up at her funeral. I felt like I got stabbed in the gut when I realized I seen him there. I began reading her texts, and first I found out that she was on her way back, from his place. 3 hours before the accident she texted him saying, "I'm on my way." I knew that meant he was the last one to see my wife. Not only see her but having an intimate moment with her, also she would still be here right now if she wasn't seeing him. I feel like I'm going through a death of a loved one and a breakup at the same time. She did this behind my back and will never know that I found out. In a way, I feel she got to escape the heartbreak she put me through. Although I fully understand death is much worse, and even knowing everything I know, I would never ever wish this or any pain upon her. I found out not only through her texts but her Facebook messages. Something that absolutely enrages me is that she told her closest friend that this guy from work wanted to take her out to dinner. Her friend encouraged her to go out with him. It enrages me cause I knew her as well, and in person she was always very nice. But my wife was asking her to get confirmation. Had she said, "No, you are married, do not go out with him," I honestly feel like she wouldn't have done it. But her best friend was like, "Oh, is he hot? Oh, do it. Go have fun." It's just ducking and raging. This happened 6 months ago when she asked her friend about it. A few days later she talked to her friend about how after dinner she went to his place and had sex multiple times. When I read that, I honestly got physically sick. I honestly started going through a breakdown, vomiting in the toilet, then crying on the bathroom floor. I just can't imagine that this stuff actually happened, but it did. How could she do this? But as the days passed and the initial shock began to slow down, I started piecing things together. During the funeral I noticed something a little unusual, which was this best friend of hers, talking to one of her co-workers. This was a friend from high school and there was no reason she should have known any of her co-workers. But she was in fact talking to her co-worker who she had the affair with. Then she came and talked to me, gave me a hug. The guy who my wife was having an affair with, came and shook my hand. Something about that just makes me feel sick. Like I was being humiliated in a moment of grief. There was him and her best friend who knew about her affair. I couldn't help but wonder, did her co-workers also know? It's been a month and I feel no closer to breaking away from the heartbreak. I miss her, I want her to be alive. If she was, I would probably even want to fix our marriage. But she's not here anymore. I still couldn't bring myself to read all of her text messages with him. There is hundreds and some are sexually explicit. My blood boils and my heart aches when I open their texts, and I get hit with anxiety and an adrenaline rush, palms get sweaty and hands shake. But I feel it's important I knew everything. It just breaks my heart this guy did things with my wife she wouldn't do for me. The thing that blows my mind the most is that there were no warning signs at all, not ducking one. Our marriage was good, she never did anything suspicious, our sex life went on as normal. Just zero warning signs about it other than the fact she started wearing a little more makeup than usual. Then I blame myself for not catching on. Maybe this all could have been prevented. Maybe I should have done this or that. I am broken and don't see myself ever being happy again. I have got a response back from her friend, stating that she is deeply sorry for encouraging the behavior and not taking my feelings into account. She never wanted me hurt and yada yada. Honestly, I don't feel any relief from her apologies. About the phone, I cannot bring myself to destroy all the truth. I feel like I must read through the entirety of my wife's texts with this man, or I will forever go crazy wondering what did and didn't occur, how often, and maybe get some answers on if they were lovers. Was it just lust/SX, or what did she plan on doing? Obviously, in this state of trauma, I cannot emotionally handle reading their conversations, but I decided to keep the phone, to read it all and then toss it and move on. Update: I can't say anything has gotten better, especially during this epidemic where I'm stuck not working now. Just too much time. Anyway, people mentioned getting in touch with my wife's company's HR about her coworker whom she was having an affair with. He is single. I have done this and I asked about it, and they said there was no policy against coworkers getting romantically involved as long as it is off work. I kind of figured this was the case. As much as I want to get him fired and ruin his life, it was in fact consensual and their affair was off the clock, so I understand that there is nothing they can do. I didn't think there was. I sent a screenshot of the message of her friend encouraging her to her boyfriend on Facebook. He replied that he is sorry for what happened to me, but that she didn't think she would actually do it, that I shouldn't blame his girlfriend for my wife's affair or death. So I guess it's dead end there, as I am talking to a doorknob who believes whatever his girlfriend says. I got a ton of suggestions about posting her texts and messages to publicize what she did. I am not going to do this, and I really don't understand the point of doing it. She is gone and has no consequences left to suffer. No justice will be served. She is gone. I will only be making this more difficult for her family. Besides, it's not really anyone else's business, even if she was alive. So I decided to go through all her texts with him and her other friends. I was going to wait longer before looking, but I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't seem to move on from wondering how, where, why, and not having any answers. Her entire conversation with him was still there from their first and last texts. Little bot of good news is she expressed guilt, although not right away, about the affair, and after meeting him the second time for SX she expressed guilt and she told him that she can't continue seeing him. But of course it would continue. Their conversations would range from her being very close to him, sending heart-filled messages, to next thing totally ignoring him. But she would sometimes apologize for ignoring him, which obviously angered me. Bad news is she appears to have been much more sexually exploratory with him. She also smoked weed with him, which I never seen her do. I found he had anal sex with her, more than once. Yet it's something she never let me do. She also had him sleep in our bed on the night I went to visit my brother. Also, she gave him head while he drove to get lunch on their lunch break. She talked about it like it was funny. This isn't something I was ready for. I began shaking and puking. It gave me a severe anxiety attack and I resorted to drinking last night, cause it was just too much. I feel like he took her from me, like he killed her because she would be alive if she didn't go to his place. I've been obsessed with the dates on their messages which they would meet. I'd go back to my social media and camera album to see what day that was. I was heartbroken when I seen they met on our anniversary, where I took her to dinner to the first place we went on a date. I remembered that day as a very good night with her, very romantic, and we were both so happy and close. I felt like got hit in the gut knowing she had sex with another man just hours before our date. Makes me sick and I don't see how I can get over this. My mind is still numb after what I read last night. I just can't believe that shit actually happened. I honestly wish I never discovered this. I'd much rather have left her phone alone. I'd rather have remembered something I never knew, a lie compared to how I feel now. But now that I know, I need to let go of all the love I have for her. I'm mourning her death and I miss her so much, but it's time I need to realize she isn't who I thought she was. I have read everything there is to know, and at least I don't think I can hurt any more than I'm hurting now. Here is to hopefully healing. I have a talk with a psychologist in about a month, but if I feel any worse I will go to the hospital because I am close to feeling suicidal. But I know it's an illogical feeling. I must go on. My 31M wife 30F had sex with an ex-BF. The wound is still fresh as this happened Memorial Day weekend, and I found out about it just 2 days ago. Be warned, this may be a bit on the long side. My friend I'm currently crashing on the couch with directed me to this sub as a place to vent and get insight on my situation. My wife Mary and I have been together 6 years, married for 4 of them. We met at the tail end of our time in college. She had months prior gotten out of a relationship, whereas I had never been in an actual relationship to that point. I was a player, or a duck boy as they call them these days. I admit that in my later teens, well into my 20s before I met her, I played the field. When we started dating officially, she knew well of my body count because a couple of associates were among the numbers. She's only had 2 sexual partners aside from me, the guy she dated in college for 2 years before she met me, and her HS boyfriend Nate, who happens to be the guy she cheated on me with. I'll spare you the life story of our marriage. We have no kids. We both are professionals and live in an apartment here in New York. There have been 0 hiccups in our relationship. Just the usual spats married couples have. There's been no lack of intimacy, affection, or communication. This is why I'm so absolutely blindsided by this. For the last couple of weeks, Mary had been acting strange. She was being a lot more clingy and lovey-dovey with me than normal. She's always been an attentive woman, but it felt like she was going out of her way the last couple of weeks. And it also seemed as if there was something eating her up inside, but when I asked if something was wrong she'd say it was nothing. I now know that it was anything but nothing. 2 days ago, Mary comes to me as I'm doing my evening workout and says she has something to tell me. I ask what, and she drops a nuke on me. She had sex with Nate at her parents' Memorial Day shindig in her hometown, Metuchen, NJ. They have this event every year, and this year I was unable to go because I had other obligations to tend to regarding my business. Turns out Nate had returned to the East Coast after being over in Japan for decades. From what she's told me about Nate, he was a military baby, and the reason they broke up is because his father ended up on a 4-year deployment to Okinawa. This was told to me early in our relationship. Nate apparently stayed in Japan for years after, and has recently returned to the US. Long story short, as she says, there was alcohol and lots of conversation of the old times. Old feelings flared up, and by evening's end she ended up back at his place where they had sex. I'm usually a calm, level-headed guy, but I admit I lost my shit. It took all I could muster not to throw her out of a window. I cursed her 50 ways to Sunday and stormed out of our apartment. I didn't even bother packing anything, I just left. She tried to beg and plead for me not to go, and made an attempt to block my way to the door, but I shoved her out of the way and slammed the door behind me. In hindsight I know that's probably going to cost me, but it is what it is. Like I said, this went down 2 days ago, and I'm presently typing this from my friend's apartment. She knows I'm here, as my friend had returned to my apartment to gather some things for me. I've completely cut contact with her, as I'm in no mental state to hear anything she has to say. So Reddit, is my marriage over? I love her with every ounce of my soul. I'd go through hell and high water for her. But this? I can't shake this. To her credit she at least admitted to cheating on her own accord, but to all of a sudden have tingles for your first boyfriend and duck him the first day you reunite with him? Is this karma for me being a womanizer when I was young? I'm just lost, confused, hurt and angry right now. How do I cope with this? Update, there's a lot of comments that have been made that I don't think I'll be able to respond to all, but I want to clear up a couple of the major points. First off, regarding a post-nup, I made that comment not in a right frame of mind. In all likelihood it won't be needed. While my state of New York is notoriously bad for men regarding divorce, if in fact I do decide to go that route I know Mary will not take me to the cleaners. Despite what a lot of you may think of her given the circumstances, she is not a vindictive or spiteful woman. I know a lot of you are going to fight me on that, but she's not. The next thing I want to address is the idea that this was premeditated. Today, I went over the data records on my cell phone plan and I can confirm that the first time they communicated May 27th, 2 days before the event. There is 0 communication between the two before that point, and a few texts from Nate following, that Mary never responded to. The last time he attempted to reach her was June 10th. So you can take the theory that they planned this months in advance or have been hooking up for months and throw it out of the window. Lastly, I've taken the time over the last day to think to myself with insight from my friend what I should do next, and the next immediate move I've decided to make on the matter is get time away from all of this. I need to sort things out, so I'm taking a step back from interactions, including social media. I will post an update once I've sourced things out. To everyone who has given me good, solid advice, I thank you. For everyone who has projected their own misgivings and toxicity of their own circumstances upon my situation, maybe you need to disconnect from social media as well. No kids. Short marriage. You are still young and fit. Get out now clean with no alimony or child support. No ties that bind. It's not your fault. Your marriage doesn't have to be over. You can stay, rug sweep this affair, turn a blind eye to future affairs, and raise AP's babies for them. Or you could respect yourself and divorce. And is it only me, or is the fact that she screwed her ex just a bit extra insulting? She betrayed you for a rerun.